Let us start today's work with the physical properties of the refrigerant. First of all, the physical properties are generally stability and inertness, corrosive properties, viscosity, and thermal conductivity, dielectric strength, leakage tendency, and cost. These are the main physical properties. These are the main items which comes under the heading of physical properties. But stability and inertness means stability means this particular refrigerant or this particular chemical does not react or does not decompose into atmosphere very quickly, so that its constituent has some stability in their properties. Inertness, it does not react with the human skin or does not react with the surroundings, the surroundings or with the tubes which are carrying them. So an ideal refrigerant is supposed to be does not decompose at any temperature normally encountered in the refrigerator system. We are operating a lower temperature and higher temperature system. A system evaporator portion is operating at a comparatively lower pressure and temperature, and a condenser portion is acting at comparatively higher temperature and pressure. And it is supposed not to have refrigerator should not decompose or break into other components. It is components at any of this temperature, which is supposed to be encountered in the refrigerating system. It should not form higher boiling point liquids or solid substance through polymerization. It should not convert it into higher boiling point liquids. Means it is converted by the polymerization should not convert it into solid substances or should not convert it into liquids at with higher boiling point. Some refrigerants are generally disintegrate among their molecules and forming non-condensable gases, which causes high condensing pressure and vapor lock. This type of temperature rise, sometimes it is disintegrate. It forms a non-condensable gas, which cannot be. It remains gas. It cannot be concentrated into liquid, which means cause high condensing pressure and high vapor lock. We want to control the pressure rise and temperature rise and control the pressure drop and temperature drop at your will, at your controlling process. But here it will increase automatically the condensing pressure considerably, and the vapor decrease excessive mass, which can clog the whole system. The disintegration refrigerant may be due to reaction with metals. In order to avoid this, refrigeration should be inert with respect to all metals used in the refrigerating system. This disintegration may be due to the reaction with the metals of the tubes carrying refrigerant in different stages. Refrigerants we are using liquid stage and gaseous stage, and tubes mostly we are using brass and copper. And we should not, this refrigerant should be inert to these metals, means it should not have any reaction or any decomposition by coming into contact with these metals which are used as a tube. Mostly we use the Freon group of metal refrigerants. It is stable up to a temperature of 535 degrees centigrade. Means it does not have any reaction or decomposition or depolymerization at up to a temperature 35 centigrade, which is much above the usable boiling point. Above this, it decomposes from corrosive poisonous products. The Freon refrigerants are not used with rubber baskets, as it acts as a solvent with rubber. So, since sulfur dioxide does not decompose it below 1645 degrees, that is one of the most stable refrigerants. One important thing, the Freon refrigerant, which is mostly used, should not use with any rubber gaskets into different portion, different valves, different inputs of the tube, because Freon is a solvent of rubber. So it is a solvent with rubber. It melts the rubber and form a liquid, So you have to avoid the rubber totally all when you are using all sort of phenol refrigerant. But sulfur dioxide, along with this so much toxic nature, and along with this uh, increase in toxicity when it is reacted with the reacted with the side itself, then therefore it is one of the most it is does not decompose at 1645 degrees centigrade. So it is most stable refrigerant. Next, corrosive property, which was chemical as well as physical properties. The corrosive properties of the refrigerant must be taken into consideration while selecting the refrigerant. The freon group are non-corrosive with practically all metals. This, which means this refrigerant, whatever you use, should not react with the metal itself and should not react with the atmospheric air. But all the freon refrigerant does not react with the metals. It remains non-conservative with the metal itself. The ammonia is used only with iron and steel, but because it has reaction with others. Sulfur dioxide is non-conforming to all metals in the absence of water because sulfur dioxide reacts with water and forms sulfuric acid. Sulfur dioxide generally it is not used due to its toxicity. One very important and very important disadvantage is it should be used always in the absence of every shot of water because if it is, comes in contact with water, it will form sulfur dioxide, and which is extremely corrosive in nature for the tubes of the refrigerant system. And viscosity means stickiness. The refrigerant of the liquid and vapor should have very low viscosity, should not be sticky at all. It should not be sticky at all. Why? Because the pressure drops in passing through the liquid suction lines are small. Because liquid lines are in a normal refrigerating system, especially in our domestic refrigerating air conditioning system, liquid lines are very small in length. Well, here pressure drops are considerably less, almost negligible. The heat transfer through condenser and evaporator is improved at low viscosity because if it is sticky nature, it will remain adhered to the wall of the tube inside, and the heat transfer from the flow is definitely restricted, and the heat transfer is mainly dependent on the flow of the fluid refrigerant or vapor refrigerant. So stickiness will adversely affect the heat transfer from anywhere, from maybe from condenser, maybe from evaporator. Now, following table gives us the viscosities of different refrigerant at atmospheric pressure for mostly common refrigerant. At liquid temperature -15 to 35 degrees centigrade, it's at vapor temperature -15 to 30 degrees centigrade. So these are the viscosity given by R11, 12, 32, and ammonia, vapor, ammonia, sulfur, all these fluid refrigerants. Here you see the viscosity is less. Viscosity is more than in low temperature in vapor as well as in liquid, but in higher temperature viscosity is less. But in terms of all these freon-based refrigerant, the viscosity at lower, except that R11, others are more or less very less in lower as well as higher temperature. But in comparison to them, the viscosity of this ammonia and other refrigerants are comparatively less than, is also comparatively less. Slightly more, but not that excessive viscosity is important. They are less in volume. So this is the ammonia. This is 729 is there, not there. 744 carbon dioxide. CO2, 764 is SO2, and 118 is water. So these are not very viscous. Any of the refrigerants which are commonly used at vapor stage, at the liquid stage, at low temperature and higher temperature. Now, next comes the thermal conductivity, which is one of the most important property. And in the liquid and vapor state, it should have highly conductive of heat, or it is the most important parameters you can say from the physical side, because it should be highly converted from absorbing heat from the refractory chamber and disposing heat to the surroundings from the condenser. The heat transfer coefficient of evaporator, this compressor is required in finding the heat transfer coefficient in the evaporator condenser. Here, the thermal conductivity of common refrigerants. Here again, thermal conductivity is watt per minute per degree Kelvin. Here you see the maximum thermal conductivity is around R717, which is nothing but ammonia. R744 is CO2, R67384 is SO2. And these are, all of them are highly thermal conductive in nature in comparison to all freon-proof refrigerant in liquid state as well as in gaseous state as well. This is ammonia. Yeah. CO2, SO2. So this is the temperature at 0 degree centigrade, 30 degree at 0 degree, 30 degree at 0 degree. In 0 degree, it is like this. It is like always in highly thermal conductive nature. Next cost, dielectric strength. It is important in hermetical scale unit, which are using almost everywhere, in which electric motor is exposed to the refrigerant. Here, electric motor is exposed to the refrigerant. This is the important thing. The relative dielectric strength, the refrigerant is the ratio of dielectric strength of nitrogen and the refrigerant vapor mixture. The relative dielectric strength, if you want to make a comparative study of the dielectric strength of a refrigerant, is the ratio of the dielectric strength of nitrogen and to the ratio of refrigerant vapor mixture. What is the dielectric strength? It is the ability to absorb the electricity, to resist the electricity in the refrigerant system. Here, the higher dielectric strength means the higher the refrigerant is preventing electric field to come and absorb it. Now, dielectric strength, always you see its maximum here. It is shown that R11, and more or less in all freon-based refrigerant it is high. At the same time, for ammonia, carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide, it is less than the freon-based entity. R113. Next, leakage tendency. The leakage tendency of a refrigerant should be low. The leakage tendency of the refrigerant should be low. If there is a leakage of refrigerant, should be easily detectable. Generally, depreciation occurs due to the opening in the joints or flaws in materials used for construction. Since the fluorocarbon represents a colorless, therefore the leakage will increase the operating cost. The ammonia leakage is easily detected due to its pungent color. Now, how the refrigerant is supposed to be make the leakage? Generally, if it does not react or corrode the or corrupt this react and corrupt this fluid, if it does not react, generally very little chance of the liquid leakage from the tubes, except for the joints or flaws in material. There may be some flaws in the material. It is not due to reaction, but due to certain breakage or gap in the reaction. They are find out will get certain leakage from the tube used for the construction itself. Now, for all these refrigerants are colorless. That's why its leakage is comparatively difficult to ascertain, but we have to check it regularly by using soap solution, especially for the joints, and especially on the high pressure area, high pressure side of the total refrigerating system. For ammonia, leakage is easily detectable as it has a pungent color. The leakage of hydrofluorocarbon may be detected by soap solution. The latter is used a Halliday torch and an electronic leak detector. The latter is generally used in big refrigerating plants. The ammonia leakage is detected by using burning sulfur candle within the presence of ammonia, from which forms aluminum sulfate. Next, cost. Cost of the refrigerant is not so important in small refrigerating unit because your amount of consumption is very less, but it is important in high capacity refrigerating system like industrial and commercial system. The ammonia, being the cheapest, is widely used in large industrial plants such as cold storage and ice plants. The refrigerant R22 is costlier than refrigerant R12. So the cost of losses due to leakage is also important. So ammonia is the cheapest, but refrigerant R2 costlier than 12, and they have relative price, which we are supposed to do accept as per your capacity and as per your other suitable properties. Cost of the losses and leakage is also important in nature. Next, we are discussing this. We'll discuss the secondary refrigerant. Now, the most widely used the secondary refrigerant is brine or salted water. These are secondary refrigerants are generally used when the temperatures are required to maintain below the freezing point of water, that is 0 degrees centigrade. The temperatures are supposed to maintain below the freezing point of water. In case of temperature involved is above the freezing point of water, then the water is commonly used as secondary refrigerant. Not brine, but water. The brine is a solution of water in salt in water. It may be noted the brine is mixed with water, then freezing temperature of the solution becomes lower than that of the water. Freezing temperature, the temperature at which the water becomes high, is lower than that of the original water if it's mixed with the salt itself. It is due to the fact that salt, while Dissolving water takes up the latent heat and from the solution cools below it from the freezing point of water, cools it below the freezing point of water. So here, during dissolving of the salt to the water, it also absorbs some of the fat, some of the latent heat, and it can be cooled below the freezing point. Thus, it can be cooled below the freezing point. The mass of the salt in the solution is expressed as the temperature of the mass of the solution and is known as concentration of the solution. As the concentration of the solution increases, the freezing point also decreases. This more and more amount of salt you are supposed to dissolve, which at the time of dissolving will absorb certain amount of latent heat required for its dissolving. Now, its freezing point, more and more salt is given, its freezing point will go up, go down. As the concentration of the solution is freezing, but if the concentration of salt is increased beyond a certain limit, then freezing point will start increasing instead of decreasing. The point at which the freezing point is minimum is known as the eutectic temperature, and concentration at this point is eutectic concentration. Eutectic temperature, the temperature at which the higher the amount of salt to be absorbed, the higher will be the reduction of the latent heat of the water for changing. এটা কার আমার নয়, এটা তো আমার নয়। আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, কিন্তু ঠিক আছে। Now, so there is a maximum optimum mass which this brine solution or salted salt solution can absorb. So the point at which the freezing point is minimum is called eutectic temperature. Eutectic temperature and the concentration at this point, eutectic concentration. The brine used in a particular application should have a concentration for which the freezing point of boiling at least 5 degrees to 8 degrees is lower than the brine temperature required. A particular application should have a concentration for which the freezing point of the brine at least 5 degrees to 6 degrees lower than the brine temperature required. So that what is the event? The say certain brine temperature is demanded by the system. The freezing point should have at least 5 degrees to 8 degrees less than that but desired or required brine temperature, so that and the amount of brine present, the amount of salt present in the brine should be such that it will freezing point will be less than the 8 degrees centigrade desired for the system. Now, brine commonly used in calcium chloride. These are commonly common salts. Sodium chloride, that is common salt, NaCl, and glycols such as ethylene glycol, polyethylene glycol, etc. The calcium chloride brine has the eutectic temperature of 55 degrees centigrade at salt concentration of 30% by mass. Has the eutectic temperature of minus 55 degrees centigrade at salt concentration of 30% by mass. This brine is primarily used when temperatures below minus 80 degrees centigrade are required. It is generally used in industrial process cooling and freeze drying. The chief disadvantages of calcium chloride are dehydrating effect and tendency to impart bitter taste to food product. Now, at calcium chloride minus 55 is the eutectic temperature. This is the temperature where maximum amount of salt can be absorbed, and it is the temperature which will reduce the temperature of the water, latent heat of the water which and the latent heat of water. This is the maximum reduction of the latent heat of the water here at 30% soil concentration by mass. When temperature minus 80 degrees centigrade is required, these brine solutions are mostly used. The sodium chloride brine. The sodium chloride brine commonly used are the sodium chloride brine has the eutectic temperature minus 21 degrees, 21.1 degrees centigrade at salt concentration 23 by mass. Here, its eutectic temperature is minus comparatively less than the calcium chloride brine, and salt concentration is also less. So it can reduce the latent heat of water where it is dissolved to a comparatively less degree. This is the chilling and freezing of metal used in metal and steel. But the calcium chloride has serious disadvantage that it can impact a weaker taste to the food products. Both the above brines are corrosive in nature for metallic containers, which put limitation of their use. So these are extremely corrosive in nature. It reacts with the salt, reacts with the metal, and thus corruptive. Also, the thermal properties of the above two brines are less satisfactory. The thermal properties like stability, like corrosivity, like this, these are completely less bad application for that. Other water solution compounds known as antifreeze, also used for decreasing the freezing point of water for certain refrigeration use. What is ethylene and propylene glycol have a number of good properties since they are non-corrosive and non-electrolytic even in the presence of water. Therefore, these brines are most extensively used in antifreeze elements. So what we have, first of all, the salt water as the salt water to be used as a secondary solution. Then other salt water soluble compounds are antifreeze compounds or secondary solution are also used for decreasing the freezing point of water. This solution is used to decrease the freezing point water much more than the corrosive without have any corrosive effect like brine solution. They are non-corrosive and non-electrolytic even in the presence of water. Therefore, these brines are more expensively used as antifreeze solution. Now, the following table shows us what are the different applications of various brines. Brines, from this table is clear, brine is not only the salted water, but it can be dissolved for the reduction of its latent heat of freezing by other chemicals other than the salt, calcium chloride and calcium sulfide, calcium chloride and calcium carbonate. Say breweries, it is polyethylene glycol used in breweries, and other chemical plants mainly sodium, calcium, and ethylene chloride and ethylene glycol are used. Same is the case with dairies, food products. These are the applications. Here, the brine used chloride water, chloride everywhere, in salt, NaCl, and ice plant, sodium chloride, ice gives us calcium chloride, polypropylene chloride, and sodium chloride for ice plant, metal packing, and selective ring is selective ring, getting ring where sodium chloride and ethylene glycol and special low temperature sodium chloride and becomes ethylene glycol. And there is social skating ring, calcium chloride, and ethylene glycol or special low temperature, calcium chloride or ethylene glycol. So these are the different brines, which is a solution of water with different type of chemicals, mostly calcium associated sodium chloride or certain polypropylene, certain ethylene and propylene, ethylene glycol or propylene glycol. So somewhere in here we are using ethylene propylene glycol, and here you are using here and here we are using ethylene glycol. So with this, the module on refrigerant is finished. Let us go to another module. Next module, our vapor absorption refrigeration system. Now, let us introduce another module, which is the vapor absorption refrigeration system as one of the, as it is the oldest method of producing refrigerant effects, first invented by Michael Faraday in 1884 and Ferdinand Care in 1860. This system may also be used in both the domestic and large industrial refrigerating plant. The refrigerant commonly used in a vapor absorption system is ammonia. The vapor absorption system uses heat energy instead of mechanical energy, as in vapor compression system, in order to change the condition of the refrigerant. Now, here initially what we have done for a better compression refrigerant system, we use a compressor, whose job is to withdraw vapor from the evaporator, withdraw vapor refrigerant from the evaporator, compress it to a higher temperature and pressure, and then send to the condenser with the temperature pressure higher than the surrounding atmosphere, so that it can be reject heat easily to the surrounding. Next, the liquid refrigerant, now the condenser comes out to the expander, and this goes to the, from the expansion, pressure is released, that goes to the evaporator again. So compression, we are applying work and to increase, applying work and applying energy to increase the temperature and pressure of the refrigerant, as well as it is applying energy to maintain the flow of refrigerant inside the system. In the vapor absorption system, the compressor, now here in the vapor absorption refrigeration system, this compressor is replaced by an absorber, a pump, and a generator, and a pressure reducing valve. So what we are having here, an absorber, which is absorber of heat, a pump which is required for pumping the fluid through the system, and a generator which is used for generation of heat, and a pressure reducing valve which controls the valve line pressure up to a limit which can go up or down. These components in vapor absorption system perform the same function as that of the compressor in vapor compression system. These components in vapor absorption system perform the same function as that of a compressor in vapor compression system. This component in vapor absorption system perform the same function of a compressor as in a, here the vapor refrigerant from the evaporator is drawn into an absorber first, where it is absorbed by which solution of the refrigerant, forming a strong solution. Well, some the concentration of saturation, concentration of the solution is increased here in the refrigerant. This strong solution is pumped to the generator where it is heated by some external pressure. During the heating process, the strong solution is pumped to the generator where it is being heated by some external sources. During heating, the vaporization is driven off by the solution, enters the condenser where it is liquefied. So what we are having here, then the aqueous refrigerant is close to the evaporator and cycle complete. So what we are doing, the vapor first we have to draw. There is an absorber, there is a pump, and there is a generator. First of all, what we do, absorption, refrigeration. It replaces compression of vapor, compression, refrigeration system. By an absorber, a pump, a generator, uh, and a pressure reducing valve. What we do, absorbs and converts weak refrigerant solution in strong solution. Means it supplies more refrigerant to increase the concentration of refrigerant in the solution. A pump which pumps the maintains the flow of refrigerant. A generator, it supplies heat to the refrigerant. A pressure reducing valve controls the pressure in the system. Next, after the heating, the paper refrigeration, heated paper refrigerant goes to the condenser where it is reduced, where it is heat is released and it is, paper is liquefied. Then liquid refrigerant flows into the evaporator, and thus this cycle is complete. So this is being shown here and the figure. Here it is the absorber, the flow of liquid refrigerant from the absorber. It is low pressure. It receives the heat and from the evaporator. It is low pressure and weak solution of ammonia. Here the refrigerant used is the refrigerant used is ammonia mostly. Now in the absorber, here it absorbs considerable amount of refrigerant to make a weak solution, a strong solution. Next, by the pump, it is goes pumps and goes to the generator with certain heat or heating coil, with certain either heat or by using heating coil, it generator heat is supplied. Then from generator it goes to the high pressure, high temperature ammonia. Ammonia vapor pressure is increased by the pump and temperature is increased by the generator. Then weak solution, it strong solution goes through this line, and weak solution comes back to the through the pressure reducing valve. It comes back to the absorber instead. Now again becomes strong and goes to the generator. And high pressure ammonium vapor is goes to the condenser where cold water is being circulated for cooling it, and heat is reacted in the cold water, and then goes to the liquid ammonia. It's converted into from vapor to liquid. It goes to the liquid ammonia to the through the receiver, where it is the certain collector of the refrigerant, where it is collected and converted in proper way, then sent to the same to the expansion valve and to the evaporator. Evaporator. So here what we have, instead of compressor, we are using generator, absorber, pump, and pressure reducing valve. Okay, let us stop our class. Let's stop here. Thanks for your comment and thanks for your patient hearing.